Currently in the United States, millions of innocent and defenseless animals are being shocked, mutilated, and killed all in the name of science and research. If these heinous acts were occurring outside the laboratories, the experimenters inflicting such torture would be charged with animal abuse or cruelty. The brutal methods and the senseless, excessive, and many instances totally unnecessary experiments inflicted upon these creatures is unacceptable, and an insult to the animal's psychological capacity. However, in our society, any new medical treatment or pharmaceutical for humans, each product by law, must be assessed and analyzed via rigorous tests to ensure the safety and effectiveness of the therapy. One of the early stages of the process includes the application of such medical operation on animal subjects. Since this step relies on living and conscious beings, the ethical practice of animal testing has created an extensive and passionate debate. The key reasons why animal experimentation is not justified for its use for medical advancements includes the fact that animals are sentient creatures that have the ability to feel an array of emotions, can rationalize to a degree, and can suffer. In addition, animal experimentation is a form of speciesism, and there are many instances where the results achieved through experimentation has proven useless for humans. In Peter Singer's essay, Practical Ethics, he uses the principle of equal consideration to convey the idea that animals should be treated with the same level of respect as humans, and we should care for the being that is suffering more, even if the being is an animal, because any unequal treatment is an act of speciesism. Singer accepts that animals have the ability to express emotions, and in the example of animal experimentation, they are competent enough to suffer. This is evident by their facial expressions and body language, and yet we continue to ignore their anguish for our gain. To combat this, Singer poses a following scenario. You slap a horse's rump, the horse will move forward and will experience minimum pain. But if you slap a baby with the same amount of force, then the child will cry and be in much more discomfort than the horse. Thus we accept that it is worse to harm the baby than it is to harm the horse. Now, if we change the scenario so that the animal is the one suffering more than the child, like how it is during various experiments, most people would find a reason to justify it without any other logic beyond the fact that the child is a member of our species and thus has a higher precedence over the animal. This is an act of speciesism and is morally wrong. However, we find no issue overlooking such prejudice except when it applies to a form of discrimination against a demographic in our species. Here's another scenario Singer allows the reader to reflect on. Would the experimenters who justify their actions against animals as a way to save thousands of humans be willing to inflict the same methods of animal experimentation on an orphan child or a mentally handicapped individual to save the thousands? If the experimenter answers no, then they are a speciesist, since most of the animals being tested have a higher psychological capacity, a stronger potential unity, and are more aware of their emotions than young children and mentally challenged people. The experimenter is biased and morally wrong since there is no moral characteristic that makes people differ from non-human animals. Another source of material I would like to refer to is the podcast interview with Dr. Leone and Dr. Stephanie Theriault entitled The Emotional Lives of Animals, as evident that animals have the ability to express emotions. During this session, they mentioned the following instances where animals express vivid emotions. The trauma caused when a dairy calf was separated from her mother for a day, an elephant calf wailing while in the presence of her deceased mother, and the existence of elephant graveyards for these wonderful creatures to mourn the loss of their fellow members. These are examples in which one should look to their behavior and correlate it to a human in duress and great sadness as proof of the existence of emotion comparable to humans. In a different interview with Dr. Barbara King, author of How Animals Grieve, King discussed in a memorable manner the relationship between two ducks and how they are a prime example of how emotional animals are. Harper and Cole were two ducks that were rescued from a foie gras factory, and after being rescued were quote-unquote decimated physically and emotionally. This traumatic experience bonded the two ducks, which led them to being able to trust humans again. Unfortunately, the euthanasia of Cole in the presence of Harper had a terrible and profound impact on the surviving duck. Following Cole's demise, Harper isolated himself from others, became fearful of humans again, and visited places where Harper could reminisce of fond memories he shared with Cole, such as the pond located in the sanctuary. King defines grief as, quote, an animal who is physically affected by the loss of a partner and emotionally affected. After relaying the story, I believe that this particular duck was suffering and grieving over the loss of his companion. One of the key ways to determine if a being has high cognitive abilities is to look to their language and examine the complexity. In a podcast titled Bottlenose Dolphins Whistling on a First Name Basis, Carol Hills discusses the knowledge Dr. Vincent Janik has unearthed about the dolphin language. While studying the pods located in St. Andrews and the Moray Firth in Scotland, Janik discovered how particular whistle patterns elicit a certain response, and the response itself is dependent on the context of the scenario. Some examples of this include attempting to integrate a new sound in the presence of 2 males and 1 female dolphin versus playing the new sound near a mother dolphin with her calf. When projecting the new sound in the presence of the 2 males and 1 female, the males will interpret it as a threat and will become aggressive. However, when this new sound is played near the mother with her calf, very little or no response sound would be elicited from the mother as a means to protect herself and her young from a possible threat. Though I believe animal experimentation is not justified for its use in the medical field, this ethical debate continues to divide individuals based on their personal experiences, their knowledge of the issues, and their ability to feel compassion for all creatures.